Okay.
All right. So, you guys, I don't know if you realize this or not, but this Saturday is the start of our corporate fast here at SHOP. So, if you haven't started thinking about it yet, or prepping, now is sort of like crunch time to start doing that. Okay. So this is like, staying up all night. It's 2 in the morning. That type of thing.
24/6.
Yeah. And so another little sheet we're going to pass around. As we brought up, I'm going to go over some of the fasting guide with you guys. During the 21-day fast, we are holding a prayer set at SHOP every day for the 21 days from 6 to 8 p.m. Now, obviously, when we have nights like tonight or a sitting to 10 on Thursday, those times will be lumped into those normal class times. Well, anyways, with that, we are going to pass around a little sign-up sheet. If you would like to sign up to lead in a worship leader slot, prayer leader slot, or even scripture leader slot. Now, as far as like worship leader and all that goes, that really can be, if you just want to do instrumental, if that's more your speed, that's fine, But we have like 2 sign-ups, one for each hour of the 2 hours. 2 hours we'll have because it's 6 to 8. So you can sign up for a 6 to 7, 7 to 8. Or if you're feeling really crazy, you'd be like, I want the whole 2 hours. So you can do that. Prayer leading is kind of like what you've seen myself or Jenn or Jack or Andrew, a few other people do on the mic on Saturday nights sometimes, where we just take sort of, whether it's a passage of scripture or something to intercede about, and we pray into that. So you can do that. And then the real easy option would be scripture reading. If you are like, man, I don't know if I could worship lead, I don't know if I could prayer lead. That just seems like a lot for me. A real easy way for you to take part in some of our prayer times is just taking aside some time to scripture read. And so
what does that look like, Nate?
That looks like this.
Show us what that looks like.
Jeremiah 10. Hear what the Lord, and you just read for 2 hours.
Aloud.
At the mic.
At the mic. At the mic, yes. We do encourage it is at the mic, though. So we really want you guys to, take part in this. Everyone to sign up and feel like you're a part of this. We don't want to just have to do it all ourselves. And you'll see there next to like some, especially our Saturday nights where we already have, worship leaders set for our Abide set. There's people there, but otherwise you can fill that up.
Where will that be posted? So if they decide later.
Slack.
On Slack?
What do you mean?
It'll be posted on Slack and maybe in the lobby too.
Right. Yeah.
Physically in the lobby.
Yeah, if you want to sign up at another time. Okay, so does everyone have your prayer and fasting guide in front of you? I hope so. A lot of painstaking blood, sweat, and tears went into this. And so we hope that this is a good resource for you and that you use it not only for this, but just fasting as a lifestyle. And in general, you go down through this, really walks you through everything you need to know from the theology, the practical applications, and things like that. And so, it opens up what is fasting, go through that, explains that to you. Why are we doing this fast as a house is on that page. Fasting preparation, how to prepare our heart, our body, and our schedule. Because if you're doing that for 21 days, you need to do that. Types of fast. Again, if fasting is something new to you, this practical stuff is really important. It's a good way to get you started into fasting. And I talk about, everything from a Benedictine fast to a complete fast where you do liquids only or something like that. Those are all spelled out there and explained. I even, for real baby steps, gave a sample menu for some of you if you wanted to try that route. Okay?
All of Nate's favorites.
And A few other notes. Those are just kind of some important notes to remember. The rewards of fasting. Jesus said that you receive rewards when you fast, and they'll be reaped when you fast. So read that. And then also very important, breaking the fast. Right here. Breaking your fast. This is extremely important. Where most people get sick or where most people mess up, because you might say, you know what, I'm going to do a Daniel fast. I'm only going to eat fruit and veggies for 21 days. And then day 22, you're ordering Beavercreek pizza dive and eating a bunch of ding-dongs, and you're going to get into a world of hurt if you do that to yourself. Okay, and so this really spells out how to gradually ease yourself back into normal life, because you don't want to do it all at once. And then also there's a spiritual and emotional element in easing back into normal life as well. I kind of spell that out for you. The thing I really want to hit on tonight, I want to highly encourage you to look at is towards the back of the book at the top where it says Consecration Worksheet. We as a staff highly recommend that before the fast starts, you take time to work your way through this, because this will enable you to prepare your heart and to prepare what this fast is going to look like, because what this worksheet or guide does is it encourages you to spend time with the Lord, because we don't want to just follow a formula. We don't want to do what just some people have done. We want to do what we see the Lord doing. And so this will walk you through doing that in your life and praying into these things rather than just saying, I'm going to do this type of fast, take it out of thin air, and I'm going to, do this and that. This really spells out like how I prayerfully think through the process. And it really, it goes like step 1 and then step 2. And, you kind of spend time in the Word, and you spend time in prayer and meditation on scriptural passages. And then, during towards the end, you get into what am I actually fasting over the next 21 days? And, you write it out there, asking God, what do you want me to fast? Write it down, commit yourself to it, and ask for His grace to help you. Okay? And then we end it with communion. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that we have a Thursday night, there's a Sin and Contend. We do an hour of prayer and worship beforehand. That'd be a great time to come in and work on this consecration fast on Thursday night. In fact, I think Andrew's teaching on consecration this Thursday.
Is that true?
You can go a little.
True.
You can go a little further into it this Thursday.
And shifting the schedule to really provide time to do this.
Okay. On Friday morning, Jack and I will be here. You can come, and we'll have the communion elements, that we have. We'll set those out. You can take communion here as you go through this whole thing, and prayerfully consider.
What time are you here Friday morning, Nate?
We are here at 6 a.m.
Can you say that again?
No, you can only say it once.
It honestly feels like 2 days when you're here. There's the day in darkness, and then the sun comes up, and it's like a new day has begun. So anyway, but yeah, you can come, over the leading up to. Because this is something we want you to do ahead of time. Now, can you do it at the start of the fast? Yes. If you came to the Saturday burn and you were you haven't done anything yet, you could do that during that 6-hour set very easily. But that will just walk you through that whole process. Mary Allison, how cool is that consecration?
So I've been working through it, you guys, trying to be a dutiful student, and it's amazing. God has really been stirring things in my spirit. The scriptures that it references you to gives you a really good framework for what fasting is biblically, how Jesus lived, and how that's what we're called to.
So Andrew did a great job.
Andrew nailed it, and it's been blowing my mind. So I really seriously spend time in it, because I feel like sometimes I go into fasts and it's just I'm just gonna not eat a whole lot. No. This really makes it a spiritual practice. And you see that, and it starts to work it out in your spirit beforehand. So I really recommend it.
Yes. On the very last page in the back of your booklet is Psalm 84 written out. This is the focus. We've talked about, obviously, the main is the presence of God. and centered around Psalm 84 dynamics. So this is just use this constantly throughout the next 21 days of the fast. Spend time in this word, and heck, if you're like, if you want to just come in and sign up for one of the scripture reading spots, just come in and read Psalm 84. That'd be awesome. That'd be great. That'd be a great way to do it. Huh?
For an hour.
For an hour. Just start out, just keep going.
Sing it for an hour.
Yeah.
Probably take us 10 hours to sing the whole song.
So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Any questions about this guide or about the fast, about the 21 days, anything that you're interested in?
Sweet.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, I want to add to that. You guys should all do the fast. If you're like, I'm not ready or I'm not in a good place to do like a liquid fast or whatever, find something, that you can fast, you can jump in on it with us. I mean, even in our kitchen with our family at dinner, we talked about the fast, and it's like, even giving up desserts for a few weeks. Every time that dessert passes you by, you're like, no, you know what? Jesus is worthy, and that's a moment that you gave him. So I would just encourage everybody to find something, and there's nothing too small, and that you can do for the Lord, and participating in the fast, so that we kind of binds us all together.
And even our 13-year-old son has said that he won't have 6 meals a day.
He's going to cut it down to a meager 3.
So he's like a hobbit.
We're teasing. We really shouldn't tell what he's going to do. We don't know, but he's thinking about it. All right. So I'm excited about the lesson tonight. We're back in this book, Keep Your Love On. I'm hoping this week that the lesson is easier to grab onto. If it's not, we are having an 8-week course this summer. We're going to actually do Danny Silk's video course on Keep Your Love On, and it's neat. It kind of gives us a video and then breaks us up in groups, and really we can dive into each thing more. So if you're a good student and some of this stuff, you're like, I don't know about that. Great. We have more time to talk through it, think through it, and work through it as a community and make it our own. There are ways that we will express this that are different than the ways that Danny encourages us to express it. So just want to encourage you guys. My goal as a teacher is to introduce all of this. If my goal was to teach it to you, I would be crying already, because it's probably not going to happen. But I want to introduce it to you, and I want to get you thinking. How many of you thought at least once or twice about love languages during the week? Anybody, keep your hand up if you felt like you were analyzing someone to see what their love language was at some point during the week. Yeah? No? Not at all? Yes, some of us? Okay. We discovered this amazing fact, and that is that in my family of 5, myself, my husband, and our 3 kids, we represent every single love language. So all 5 of us have a different love language, which just teaches me more, doesn't it? So before we get started with the lesson, I want to just say, I want to kind of take a word from Jesus. In Matthew 12:34, Jesus says, out of the plenty, or out of the overflow, or out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And when I read that verse, I think, all of this really comes down to our hearts. And that's what we're really challenging you guys about. It's not about saying the right things. It's about the inside. It's about taking responsibility to tend your garden and to do it with the Lord and to be intentional about it. And it does take energy. It will take a shifting of priorities and time. But what gives us an abundance in our heart so that we have plenty to speak from? We're not speaking from meager. We're not speaking from little, but we're speaking from plenty. So I just want us to take 1 minute, have our pens ready, and just ask the Lord, how do we get a heart that has an abundance? How do I get a heart that has plenty? And I just want to listen. He gave me one phrase during worship. We're going to listen for 1 minute, and we're going to see what he says to us. So, Father, we just want you to show us, how do we get a heart containing plenty and overflow? this morning when I was driving to come into shop, I just like caught the eyes of the Lord. It was like, you know, he kind of like leaned in and grabbed my attention. And it's amazing what one look exchange between you and God can say and what it can convey in a moment. And what I felt like the Lord said in a moment was, I'm not disappointed in you. You know, we're where we've always been. You know, I'm pleased as can be. Like, you're at the peak of relationship with me. Like, all those things you don't think he's going to show in his eyes because you feel the lack and you feel the weakness and he doesn't. And so tonight he said, keep coming back to my eyes of mercy. Keep coming back and starting there. You don't have to start behind because of what you didn't do yesterday or what you did do. You get to start here every single time. And that's how I can have an abundance. Does anybody else want to share a picture or a phrase that the Lord gave them just now? Go ahead, Lauren.
Not leaning on my own understanding. That verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. It's a verse you learn in Christian school a lot, like every year they have you do it. But you think more on like, in just much more general terms, but as an adult, when you start like deciding your reality or making assumptions because of your own understanding of something, it's often so limiting to the reality that God is actually setting.
It's good.
I heard the phrase connect to the flow or connect to the source.
It's good. Pictures are good too, if anybody saw a picture.
Saw a picture of a big giant cup, and I saw my little tiny cup, and the big giant cup had big giant drops of water, and one of the big giant drops instantly filled my little tiny cup.
I just heard fill up with me first. Sometimes I wake up and I don't start there, and I'm starting to fill my own self up with what I'm going to do in that day.
Or you're starting empty.
Yeah.
That bug. Someone want to swat it down? We're all too ADHD for that. What is it? What is it? It's a stink
It's a
bug.
stink bug.
So it's really going to be me to survive. Here. Sorry, it's going to smell like cilantro.
Is that really what they say?
They smell bad when you squish them.
They smell like
I don't like
cilantro.
cilantro.
I like cilantro, but not the bug smell.
It smells like rotten.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm like, ooh, Chipotle.
I'm going to pray for us. We're going to get started. Even beyond that, Lord, thank you. Thank you for the pictures that you provide the abundance. It reminds me of the spigot. We just get from you, Lord, and we overflow. You are more than enough for me. So I just feel like, you know, it's clear that the Lord is pouring his heart into this place and into the people here. And so we have an abundance. So God, I pray even tonight that you would help me to speak out of the overflow of my heart and even more out of the overflow of yours. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, to communicate. Tonight, your note sheet is blank because you get to write down what jumps out to you. To communicate is to exchange the truth inside. So communicating is not getting someone to agree with you. It is an exchange of the truth inside of me, and you share the truth inside of you. That's very important. The purpose of communication is not agreement. It is to understand. So I think that that is something we need to wash our minds with. The purpose of conversation, the purpose of communication is to understand. You are going to have way more success communicating if your goal when you walk away is to understand. Anybody agree? Versus actually, like, my goal is to win this argument. I'm going to get agreement. I'm going to persuade. I'm going to be the victor. How about instead you understand? You see into someone else's heart. You get to know more about them. Really, a good conversation takeaway is that you've heard how the person is feeling, or you've learned their thoughts or their needs, and you've also figured out how to meet them. And you walk away from a conversation like that, and you're going to be able to love them well. That is what you want. You want to understand. So I'm going to use the computer, hopefully, to, let's see if I can do this without my son. Oops.
Look how smart she is, Caleb. You've trained her well.
There's my kids on the beach.
How long ago?
This one's probably at least 2 years. I put this on my computer thinking it would be like fun to look at, but it's actually just kind of makes me grumpy.
Real hair.
This is the book. There's over 100,000 copies in print. This is the book that we've been looking at. And tonight we're going to cover communication and boundaries. It's going to be fun. So the first point, the first step in this exchange of truth is for you to, Caleb, if you want to stand over there, I can just give you a signal when I'm ready for the next slide. Would that be okay with you? Thank you.
Because we're high tech.
Yeah, we are so high tech.
Where's your clicker?
Not transparency.
No clicker. Caleb is my clicker. See, I'll do a little like.
I had that job.
All right. Lauren remembers changing transparency slides. So when you sit down to understand each other, you both get to be powerful in the conversation because you both matter equally. And what you have to say matters equally. And remember when you sit down to understand someone that you cannot control them. You should not and you cannot. Okay? You can, however, choose to control yourself. So when you sit down, you're not going to be worried about the other person. You're going to be focused on you and how you're going to keep to the goal. Self-control is to set a goal for yourself and keep to it. So you're going to keep to the goal of understanding. So the first step in a conversation, and this will typically happen before the conversation, is that you must first understand your own thoughts, feelings, and needs. Now, for some of you, that's a breeze because you're like an intense student constantly of your own thoughts, feelings, and needs. But for some of you, you're like, I have those? I didn't know. I'm so out of tune of what I have going on here. If you do not understand your thoughts and needs and feelings, then you have no right to expect anyone to meet your needs or understand them because you must communicate them. Nobody is telepathic. And even God, who sees all of us, who knows us and created us, even he says again and again, come to me, ask and you shall receive. Pour out your heart to me. Come and talk to me. It is a part of vulnerability. It's what I said last week. It's cracking open your chest and letting someone look in. And it is vulnerable and it is intimidating, but it's the first act of saying, I want to protect my connection with you. And I even want to build it. I want to make it stronger. And so I'm going to be the first one to be vulnerable. So that means you have to understand them. Now, sometimes you might not fully understand them, but you need to at least be able to communicate where you're at. And we'll talk more about the language that you need as we go along. So first thing, maybe even before that, is some of you need to admit that you have needs. Every human being has needs. Jesus Christ had needs and has needs. You can say you don't have needs because you like being the peacemaker, but you have them, and just putting them aside doesn't make them disappear. Having needs makes you human. Having feelings and thoughts, it makes you human. It also makes you a treasure. It also makes you lovable. So you need to acknowledge that you have them. And then you need to be attentive to them. So that's the first step. Understand your own thoughts, feelings, and needs. Some of us, that's where we need to start. Some of us, we're ready to move on. Okay, so the next one is you need to value your own thoughts, feelings, and needs. And this kind of goes with what I was saying. You need to recognize that your needs matter. If you decide, or you like to say, that your needs are not a big deal, what will happen is there will be nothing to provide for your needs. So you will take from someone else because the need will start to surface. And so you have to recognize that even those barrier people that like to bury things and seem so easy to please, over time they get miserable. And they usually do something drastic, like just cutting off the relationship. Like, I'm just done. You've been eating, I've been giving and giving and giving. God designed us for a give and take. He gives to us, we give to him. He takes from our hearts, we take from his. It's a give and take. It's a beautiful thing. So we need to understand that we have to value them. You have to value them enough to take the time to do number 3, which is to express them. So you can do the next one. Express them. This is where it's like, okay, maybe on a good day I can understand my needs and I will choose to value them. But how in the world am I going to express them? And that's what I'm hoping we can learn tonight and have a little fun with. We want to communicate clearly and honestly when we communicate, okay? So we're going to talk about communication styles. So the way that you want to be, the way that you want to communicate is assertive. You want assertive communication. A-S-S-E-R-T-I-V-E. Assertive communication. This is the style that you need to develop. The core belief of an assertive communicator is you matter and so do I. They have a high value for others and they have a high value for themselves. And the value they have is equal for both. It has to be both high and equal. This is what honor is. This is what a culture of honor is. It says, we are all valuable. And if you guys remember the honor lesson, what makes you valuable is the highest bid that was bid on your life. And Jesus bid on you. And his life as the Son of God is the most valuable life, arguably, ever. And he paid it for you. And he paid it for everyone. Therefore, everybody's value is high and everybody's value is equal. And that is fundamental. You guys, we have to get that. Someone that is assertive loves truth. They love truth. They're not afraid of it. They love it because they know that the truth sets us what? Free. It sets us free. To love, to be our best selves, to be who we are in our differences and still be together. Differences do not make a bad marriage. They don't. Differences aren't the problem because we can value one another and we can have a high and equal value for one another, and then we're able to communicate. You can be friends with someone who's very different from you because of these principles, okay? All right, so there are 3 other styles of communication. I'm not going to stay on this long, even though it's really fun. I'm going to use cartoons to describe them to you because this is a heavy discussion, so we need a little humor, right? But before we do the cartoons, a passive person's core belief is you matter and I don't. A passive person says you matter and I don't. They're like the bottom of the food chain. Danny Silk calls them the goat. They say everyone else is more important than me. They absorb disrespect and they move on. And they justify devaluing themselves by seeing themselves as long-suffering, patient servants who keep the peace and don't ever make problems. They think it is right and best to have no needs or requirements. In reality, they are lying and afraid to be found out for having needs because they consider needs to be selfish. Now, why would a passive person see needs as being selfish?
I say you matter and I don't.
Yeah, because everybody gets their needs met through the passive person. So to them, needs are evil, and they certainly don't want to be caught having them because they don't want to be like the consumers that take and take from them. So again, I'm going to say it again, needs are natural. Thoughts, feelings, and needs, these are part of being human, and they matter. So a passive person says, you matter and I don't. And what happens to a passive person is they get sick of giving away and they get bitter. And their bitterness grows so much that they finally just cut relationships off. They'll just cut the person off when they're done. And then they just kind of start the cycle again with someone else. Okay, well, we'll still wait. Aggressive communicators' core belief is, I matter and you don't. So an aggressive person, Danny describes them as a T-Rex. They know how to get what they want by being loud and demanding and angry and in your face. That's how they work to get what they need. Now, all these people, passive aggressive people, they all have the same root problem. They're just using different self-protection in order to communicate, okay? So they all have the same problem. They're just using different techniques. You will usually see a T-Rex, an aggressive person, marry a passive person. Why? Because the passive person says, I don't matter and you do. And the T-Rex person says, I matter and you don't. And it makes the perfect match for a while, right? Until the goat ends up completely eaten up and the T-Rex is still hungry for more. So you will see that a lot, this dynamic of these two getting together. There is no room for intimacy with the T-Rex at all. There's just no room for it. And with a passive person, you're never really going to know them. They're never really going to make themselves known to you. You will always just know this like facade. I don't know how to say that. Just like a facade. Thank you. A facade. You'll just always know that, and that's it. You can never really get into the core of who they are. Passive aggressive communication. This is probably the one we joke about the most. Especially, I think a lot of stuff on like Facebook. People say people use Facebook and other social media formats to be passive aggressive. I think it's older than that. I think it's much older than social media. It is the most sophisticated form of poor communication. With passive aggressive, your core belief is you matter. No, not really. So you matter, ... No, you really don't. That's a passive aggressive communication's core belief. They manipulate and control others through active deceit. And sometimes really deadly forms of punishment. They use punishment in their relationships. To your face, they'll say, oh, whatever you want, absolutely. And then they'll go out and key your car. So that's how they are, passive aggressive. Okay, so let's look at some cartoons so we can have a laugh. I'm going to read them because you guys may not be able to. So his sign says, please help or not. And his friend says, you need to be more assertive, Fred. So this is a passive beggar. You're probably not going to get much, huh? Next one, Caleb. And this is how to catch passive people. See how you just kind of put a few barriers around them and they're like, I'll stay here, sure, whatever you want. It took me a while to get that one. This one's one of my favorites. The wife says to her husband, if you're ever going to get promoted, you're going to have to develop a more assertive attitude. Just make sure you don't bring it home with you. She likes this passivity at home. She's probably a T-Rex. We found that aggressive people are more likely to smoke, even without cigarettes. This is an aggressive person. He's got their bat ready to hit someone. He's just singing along. No pain, no gain. Wanted, aggressive salesman. Maybe they meant assertive, not aggressive. And then this is the little aggressive guy, you know, who thinks he's so big. You can act ferocious all you want, but you still weigh 10 pounds. This is passive aggressive. I'm not passive aggressive, unlike some people I know. I'm fine. I want you to tell me how to change everyone else. Passive aggressive. Here we go. I was ignored. I got the silent treatment. I was talked about behind my back. I barely survived. You dang fool. I told you not to ride through passive aggressive territory. I'm sorry. You make me so passive aggressive.
Facebook.
This is an assertive class, and the sign says, go to lunch. This is my favorite. I think I left it for last. Yeah. Assertiveness training seminar. I'm sorry, sir, but we only give refunds to participants who don't demand one. Now think about it. It took me a little bit. Assertiveness training seminar. He's demanding a refund. I'm sorry, sir, but we only give refunds to participants who don't demand one. If you're not assertive, you're not going to ask for the refund, right? So that's the joke. He's learned to be assertive. He doesn't get a refund. An assertive person says to a passive person, hang on, Gil, what are you going to do about it when they're talking about their needs? An assertive person says to an aggressive person, I can only talk with you when you decide to be respectful. An assertive person says to a passive aggressive person, we can talk later when you choose to be responsible and tell me what's really going on. So these are some of the languages that we'll have to learn as we deal with people at different places in their communication skills.
Will you read those questions one more time?
Sure. Where did they go? Here they are. What are you going to do about it? That's what an assertive person says to a passive person. They need to help the passive person realize they have a need and then find out what it is. So they say, what are you going to do about it? They're not devaluing the need. They're recognizing it and they're saying, what is it? What are you going to do about it? What's your plan? And it motivates them to think differently. An assertive to aggressive person says, I can only talk with you when you decide to be respectful. I've dealt with aggressive people before. They really like to pick on authority figures. They love to pick on me. And usually it's like, where is this coming from? And basically I've had to walk away from conversations before because it's not respectful. And if they don't want to move towards connection with me, if their goal is disconnection with me, and I want to move towards connection with you, there's no way we can move forward till we both want to move towards each other. And it's okay to walk away from a conversation like that. If the person is clearly not interested in moving towards you, and you're interested in moving towards them, walk away and give it some time. Tell them why you're walking away. I'm going to walk away until we can have a respectful conversation, and then try again. And then the last one, assertive to passive aggressive. We can talk later when you choose to be responsible and tell me what's really going on. So like, own up to it. I'm not playing games. Okay? All right, okay, yeah, don't move on yet. You can also use iMessages, okay? So I'm gonna write this up for you guys. Actually, who wants to write? Anybody
Desperate.
Come on.
Desperate to write.
Oh,
She's desperate. She's
I was
running.
gonna
I took my
passively.
shoes off and I want to apologize that I did.
She's being assertive.
I was gonna passively do it.
Oh, I guess I can't. You really need
Everybody knows
It's whatever you need. I don't really care.
that if there's a miscongeniality, if there's a misassertive, she would be in the running because she really helps model assertive communication.
That was not passive.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
I feel. No, I mean that. Like, I really value that about Mary Allison. She teaches me a lot. I feel, and then in parentheses, we're going to write emotion, Mary Allison. So that's where you'll insert how you feel when you're making an iMessage to someone. So I feel, and then no quotes yet. We're continuing the sentence. Yep. When, and then another insert, so parentheses, describe experience. So, Danny Silk talks in his book, and I'm going to read about his driving and how his wife feels about it. And so she would say, I feel afraid when you are driving. And then it continues, the sentence just keeps
I just
going.
get excited.
And I need to feel, and then emotion in parentheses. Now this first part of the sentence I've seen in a lot of psychology books, but Danny adds on, and I need to feel. And I like that because that means I don't have to be telepathic and I don't have to be a psychologist. I can hear from your lips how you need to feel. And then I could even ask questions like, okay, you need to feel, thank you, Mary Allison, I feel afraid when you drive and I need to feel protected. Okay, how might you feel protected? Well, possibly you could consider slowing down when we're going around a mountain that could drop off. So feel and it's the job of the listener to ask questions to clarify. And we're going to really learn this, so you don't have to worry. Okay, so an iMessage expresses feeling, not an opinion or a judgment. I feel like you are a jerk is not an iMessage. Okay? That is a judgment, and it's probably a relationship killer. It's probably going to shut down the conversation. My mother must have said it to my dad because they're having a moment. No. Just kidding. Matt and Andy are here. Who am I going to pick on?
I know. I'm so scared.
Gosh, where are you, Schultz? Where are you? Okay, they're snowboarding.
Nick and Emily keep hitting me.
Oh, I got another couple over here.
I feel scared when she drives. And I need to feel not scared.
I want to testify. I feel that way when most of that family drives. Pedal to the metal, right? However, they have good records, so I don't know how that works. An opinion or a judgment says, I'm too scared to show you me. Once you understand what's wrong with you and you admit it, then I'll show you me. Have you ever been there? I have been there. Sorry, babe. I have been there where I want Jack to see his weakness before I'm willing to talk about anything inside of me because I'm going to disconnect. I'm going to use it to bait him. He is going to have to fix his problem in a minute and then I'll open up to him. He's the leader anyways. I'm supposed to submit to him. Doesn't work that way. I crack open my chest and I show him my feelings. And then he can listen and learn. And then we both commit to making adjustments. It's really neat. It's really better. Okay, I want to read this to you guys because I think it's really good. This one is right here. Okay, these conversations, these judgments rather than iMessages can sound like this. Honey, can I talk to you? Can we share our hearts? Can we just have a conversation? Anybody ever had that started? Conversation started? Please don't get defensive, but I need to share my heart with you. Will you hear it with love? Because this is the truth, with love, right here. Here it comes, really. Honey, now listen. Please listen. Hear my heart. Well, I feel like you're selfish and evil. And for some weird reason, they expect the other person to go, thank you. I was wondering what was wrong with me. Yeah, that never happens. Instead, we need to take the approach that says, I feel a feeling and it's connected to an event. You need to connect the feeling to an event. That is so important. When this happened, this is the feeling that I had, and I need to feel something different than this when this is happening. For example, I feel scared when you drive this fast.
Oh, it's not fast.
I feel scared when you drive this way.
You'd just be backing out of the driveway.
Ruthless.
Emily likes this, I can tell. I feel scared when you drive this way. I need to feel safe and protected when I'm in the car with you. I need to hear about you and feel valued when we talk. I need to hear about you and feel valued when we talk. I feel hurt when you talk to me like that. And you may have to tell them, what do you mean? Well, when you said these words, I felt hurt, and the tone that you were using hurt me. When you hit the wall in anger, I felt scared. I feel rejected when you react to my efforts to help you like that. These are some of the ways that you can communicate. Now, if you're on the listening end, you get to decide how to respond. I've just, go to that next slide, but it'll show us the next one, but to review. I've taken the time to understand my thoughts, feelings, and needs. I valued them and I expressed them to you. Now it's in your field to decide what to do. And you can react in self-protection because you didn't like what you heard, because someone insinuated that you had room to improve, right? We all have room to improve all the time, right? Or I'm going to honor the person's vulnerability. I'm going to value their need, and I'm going to find out how to meet it. And I'm even going to adjust myself to move toward the person. I personally think that being vulnerable is not half as scary as listening and doing those things, as responding to someone who's been vulnerable and actually making the effort and admitting those things. I think that is way harder. And so it's something that I have to work extra hard at. And I have been intentional, especially as a leader, to work on listening. I want to listen to understand. I want to hear you. And I think that's really, really important. Okay, keep it respectful. Now, someone said to me after last week, what does that mean, being respectful in a conversation? Well said, because I don't know that we really do it that often. It means two powerful people have the same goal. This is what I said earlier. They're both, the person you're talking to and yourself, you're both pursuing connection. You want to move towards each other. That is a respectful conversation. If someone wants to push you away, it's not going to be a respectful conversation. You both have the same goal. And I think this example will really help you guys understand this. I know a woman who decided she would no longer contribute to any disrespectful conversation ever again. The next time she and her husband had a disagreement that led into rage and intimidation, she stopped and announced, I'll be glad to finish this conversation when it becomes respectful. I can see you're upset. As long as it stays respectful, I'll stay. He continued to explode, so she walked out. He was stunned at first and then angry. He felt powerless and punished. He sat and fumed in his anger. His wife waited a full hour before she returned into the room. She remained calm and self-controlled because she had a genuine desire to resolve the conflict. She really wanted the connection. So she came and asked him if he wanted to have the conversation again. After seeing his wife consistently behave the same way in their various disagreements, this husband became convinced that she really was never going to participate in a disrespectful conversation. He also began to believe that if she could control herself, so could he. If at any time she said, I'll be happy to have this conversation if it stays respectful, he started to adjust his tone and choice of words so he could keep her in the room while they worked out the conflict. So I think it's really helpful. There's some of these tools you may need to use in relationships that are like already in a rut. This doesn't just mean marriages. This would be relationships at work, I'm sure. Some of the relationships and the context that you guys have at work or in your family at large. Okay, so moving on. Oh, Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. Write that down. This is the verse that we always hear about the cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. You guys need to look at this scripture because that cord is the connection in a relationship. And the Bible is teaching that if we strengthen it when it gets pulled, which means in conflict and trouble and hurts and challenges, when that cord gets pulled, it's going to hold strong. So Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. Check that verse out. Okay, once you've gotten through 1, 2, and 3, and round 1 has gone well, then you move on to round 2, which is, well, as you're doing it, listen to understand other people's thoughts, feelings, and needs, and find out how they're experiencing you. We're still in the same round. Once we get to 6, then we start over. So you're going to listen, and you're going to find out how are they experiencing me. I think that's a new thought. To think, how are they experiencing me? Have you ever even, it's kind of scary ground, but has it ever occurred to you to understand how people experience you? How you come off? How they're receiving the love you're intending to send? Or the help that you're intending to give them? So it's important for us to listen in order to find out how they're experiencing us. This is what Danny tells about him and his wife. This is what I was alluding to. I love to tell people about how my wife experiences the way I drive up Buckhorn Mountain on my way to Weaverville, California. This stretch stretch of road features superb twists and turns that are perfect for weaving in and out of traffic. The risk of plummeting hundreds of feet to your death lies only a few feet away. When I'm driving, I fly around those corners, passing every car I can overtake. It's marvelous. My wife always has a completely different experience on these drives than I do, an experience I don't understand. I mean, I'm a good driver, as evidenced by the fact that I've never been in an accident. Personally, I think I should have been a NASCAR driver or at least signed up for a car rally. When she lets me know that she feels scared as I'm driving, I always think, why are you scared? You have absolutely no evidence that I'm a bad driver. You should just calm down and be like me. But as mystifying as it is, I know my wife is not like me, and I cannot make her be like me. I can't force her to feel what I feel and know what I know. I trust her to believe the best about me, so I know that when she tells me she's scared, she's not insinuating that I'm trying to scare her. She's simply telling me what she feels. If I were to argue with Sherry's feelings, I would devalue her. You shouldn't feel that way. There's no valid reason for you to feel like that. I don't feel like that. Change and be like me. This is representative of what we usually say, maybe not in those words, but that's the kind of feedback we give people to devalue their thoughts and feelings. This thought process is as ridiculous as someone saying, I'm hungry, and someone else responding, no, you're not. I'm not hungry, so you can't be hungry. How silly is that? But that is exactly what we do when we respond to others without taking the time to understand, appreciate, and validate their feelings. When I value your feelings, I will not only make it safe for you to communicate them to me, but I will also listen and respond. So hopefully those are helping you. You need to be attentive when they're talking. And number 5, the next slide, Caleb, is to value their thoughts, feelings, and needs. And that's what he's talking about. Don't devalue them. We do it a lot. Relationship killers. Like, that's not true. That's not logical. No, that's not how it is. I know that's not true. If someone is expressing their feelings to you, you have no authority on them. The only person who has authority on their feelings is the person, because they feel them. And even if their feelings aren't exactly articulated right, they're trying to express them to you. And you can kind of help them. I sense that you're angry. What exactly how do you feel when you're angry? Are you frustrated? Do you feel afraid? Do you feel hurt? And you can help them to discover their feelings. In fact, in the prayer room, right outside that door, there's like a 3 divider thing. I think there's a feelings wheel that even helps you to give better words to your feelings. So some of us may need that. Okay, ask questions to clarify. This is what I love. So at Bethel, they use the question, what do you need? Tell me what you need so I can help you. And so when you sense that someone is worked up or they're upset, you can listen to them and say, tell me what you need. Tell me so that I can help you. What do you need? They should be able to answer that question. And the reason you want them to answer it is because you want to help. And then once you're equipped with knowing what they need, you're responsible to do those things. And they can hold you responsible. Only once you have clearly expressed your need to someone and they know what to do and they drop the ball can you be disappointed with them. But so many of us are not expressing our needs and our feelings and our actions at all in the first place, and then we're mad at the people in our lives for not meeting them. We have to start and do our part. Okay, so we value their thoughts and feelings. The question I like to use at SHOP is, how is your heart? How is your heart? Tell me about your feelings. Like right away, I'm jumping in. I want to know, how's your heart doing? Let's talk about that. Because I want to know how your heart is, because that's what I want to tend to. I want to know how I can love you more. And when you share about your heart, I'm learning what keeps your heart ticking. So those are some basic questions that are easy to remember. What do you need and how's your heart that you can use when you can't remember any of this other jargon that I'm running by you? Okay, I'm going to read you guys this because I really enjoyed it. So we'll see if you enjoy it. And then we're about to play a game. I think it's funny that Danny uses a Blu-ray player in here because this is probably the newest book I've read that had that, like everything I read talks about VCR still because it's like outdated or whatever. Okay, This is Danny talking. I like to illustrate the process of communication with a TV and a DVD player. Oh, look, it says DVD. Up here it says Blu-ray player, so this must be a newer edition, and they missed a typo. Sorry, I delight in these things. Okay, imagine that you have a beautiful 60-inch flat screen 3D television and a top-of-the-line Blu-ray disc player. In order for this entertainment system to work, you need all the correct cables plugged into the right spots. Don't I know? Because I don't know how to operate my TV at home. When you put your favorite movie into the Blu-ray player, it will read its contents and send the information through the cables to the TV. The TV will then interpret the information and turn it into images. Are you all getting your minds blown yet? In a respectful conversation. I know what he's about to say. I'm like, this is good. In a respectful conversation, one of you, Joni, you get to be the Blu-ray player, and Ray, you are the TV. It's very important that you only play one of these roles at a time, or you will end up with a processing error. Okay? If you're the Blu-ray player, that's you, so pay attention, Joni. Your job is to read the contents of your feelings, thoughts, and needs, and send a clear message about those contents to said TV. Okay. The TV's job is to receive that message and display it back to you. You guys hearing this? The listener receives the message and displays it back to the Blu-ray player. Only when you both agree that the message has been successfully communicated and understood can you switch roles or discuss solutions. Of course, we're humans, not machines, so sending and receiving messages to one another is going to be a little more dynamic and take a little more time and effort. As the Blu-ray player, you might struggle to read the disc of what's going on inside you, especially if you're dealing with fear and don't have a lot of practice identifying your needs. You're probably going to throw out a bunch of messages to the TV. So, Joni, you're probably going to throw out a bunch of messages to the TV that are still in some kind of jumbled code. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, liar.
It's a secret for 40 years.
Just 40 years of bliss in the Reed house.
Very simple. The TV person's job is to help you decipher that code by asking questions. So these are questions if it ever happens, ever, that you get jumbled code that you can use. Is this what you're saying to me? Is this the message you want me to receive? Is this what I hear you say you're feeling? None of these questions should be asked or interpreted as judgments, but as an honest attempts to clarify what you, the Blu-ray player, have said. As you hear the TV feeding back your message to you, you'll be able to identify discrepancies and make corrections. No, that's not what I was trying to say at all. Let me try this again. I actually feel. So you don't have to be stressed about this process, because if you don't say it right the first time, then you just try again. As the Blu-ray player, Joni, it's your responsibility to stick to reading your disc and not offer your opinions or judgments of said TV. The minute you start to say, you this and you that, the connection cables are in danger of shorting out. If you're the TV on the receiving end of a you attack, you might try to give the Blu-ray player a pass and see if they're willing to reframe their you message as an I message. All right, so you sound scared and hurt when this happens. Is that what you're saying to me? No, I'm not scared, I'm mad. All right, but you're probably mad because you don't have control over this. Is that what you're saying? Yes, I don't have any control. Okay, well, what are you going to do about that? How can I help you? If the Blu-ray player doesn't respond to this approach and swings back to talking about you, then you'll have to set a boundary. This conversation just got disrespectful. I'm happy to continue when you're ready to show me your heart instead of telling me what's wrong with me. Every respectful conversation needs one speaker and one listener at all times. Two Blu-ray players cannot communicate. They will never know what movies they're trying to play until they hook up with the TV. No one listening means there's no conversation. Okay, and the last one is number 6, apply what you learned. Show you know how. So it's great. You go through this whole process, right? Emily's vulnerable. She tells Nick her feelings. She took time to see what they were. She describes them all to Nick. He listens really well. He asks good questions. He helps her to identify what's going on. They've resolved all this. Now Nick knows what he needs to do, and then he doesn't do it.
That never happened.
Purely hypothetical.
I mean, yes. I have to do it this way because we all know you consistently do. So it's a safe one, okay?
12 years of bliss in
No, I don't.
Basement House.
12 years of it.
Our actions speak louder than our words. So from the conversation, Nick got some important information.
You should drive.
At all times he should drive.
We've gotten to a point where I know when I can drive and when I can't. Like if we're late, she drives.
Yeah, you get there faster.
What happens?
I don't even fight it. I just sit in the passenger side, shut the door, and just like.
I think I started something over there.
I love her.
All right, Caleb, you can take a break for a little bit. I can do the rest.
You've done a great job, though.
Yeah. Guys, listen, in all seriousness, God designed us to live out of trust. And trust is about sharing truth. It's about safely being able to share truth. I mean, I would think all of you would say in the higher moments of any of your relationships, you've been able to share truth and learn truth from each other. We've all at least done it right a few times, and we want to do it right more. And we want to apply it to more than just our family or our work situation. We want to apply it here, and we want to apply it when we're ministering to people. We want to be really good, active listeners, and we want to be able to keep our love on. Jesus feels really strong about trust. If you guys want to read about that, you can read Matthew 18, 1 through 6. Jesus is talking about the children, and he talks about if you are to take advantage of the vulnerability of one of these children, it'd be better for a millstone to be hung around your neck and you put it at the bottom of the water. Jesus is really serious about how we treat people who are vulnerable to us, who open up their hearts. In fact, I read that trust is the first developmental task of life. A baby is born asking, can I trust the world? And of course, children, the unique traits about children are trust, vulnerability, honesty, innocence. Those are the unique traits about children. And so Jesus using children illustrates how he feels about people who choose to be vulnerable to you and when they choose to trust you and be honest, that those are things you should treasure and you should handle well. So there's a trust cycle. I'll write this one up. The trust cycle goes like this. 1, I have a need. How many of you have needs? There should be hands up in this room, across the board. Caleb, do you have a need? I think it was assertive. Or maybe aggressive. I don't know. Okay, have needs. Number 2, hey, if I'm teaching this, I mean, it means I've been being taught this all week long, guys. Okay, so I get 10 times the lesson. Number 2, express your need. So if you're talking about a baby, they have lots of needs. Unfortunately, they express them with the same sound, so we don't always know what their need is. But we can do better than that, and we can express them more specifically. Then 3 is there is a response to the need. This is the trust cycle that I'm going through. This is the important steps of a trust cycle. Then the need gets satisfied. Casey, did you watch the teaching last week?
Yeah, everyone knows that I get angry.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Insinuation.
Yeah. So when Casey gets to the front of the line, she knows all about like that need getting satisfied, right? You get to your plate.
Do you know I created an angry person as well?
You create.
That works just like her and
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Then you're comforted. So this is a full cycle of trust. You have a need, you express it, there's a response, the need's satisfied, and you're comforted. This teaches trust, right? And you want to make it through the full cycle again and again and again to build trust, right? Now, A lot of us fail to express our need. Therefore, there is no potential for trust to be built. If you're in a relationship with someone and you say they're not establishing trust with you, but you're not expressing your needs, you're the problem. You have got to be able to express your needs. You've got to communicate them using the iMessages we talked about. But then the failure, so let's say you express it. Failure can also come right here. Maybe there's no response when you express the need. Or maybe it's a negative response. That will also shut down. That will become a mistrust cycle, not a trust cycle. Then if there's no response or it's negative, the need's left unsatisfied and there's no comfort. And that teaches you not to trust. A lot of people in your life as children were never developed good trust cycles. They didn't have good trust patterns. The Lord can heal those things. But you need to understand that for a lot of them, they've gone into this survival mode where they just take what they need and they take what they need and they take what they need because they really don't think that their needs deserve to be met because they never have been. You can break that in their life by meeting their needs. You can help them to express them and you can meet them. Even if they're 45 years old or 75 years old, you can complete some cycles with them in your friendship. And you can teach them trust that way. What a great idea. What a loving thing to do. If they're able to receive it. Okay, God designed needs to be met in a relational exchange. We talked about this. God doesn't say, no need to tell me anything. I already know everything you need. He invites us to talk to him because when we express our needs, we get vulnerable, we open our hearts, and intimacy can start. Remember, intimacy means into me see. It's letting someone see into your heart. Okay, great. Let's play a game. Who wants to play a game? Who? How are we going to do this? Okay, wait. I got to tell him. If you're watching this video, we're going to mute it for 10 minutes. Do not leave us. Just go get a snack. You're watching online. Go get a snack. And then come back in about 10 minutes, and we're going to continue the lesson. You don't want to miss boundaries. Okay, so let's do this thing.
He's feeling thin, but he's not feeling nothing.
I can't get control to mature into the classroom.
Hey, it's the over 50 table, Sherry and Moni.
No, they got a hold up their own over there. Okay, listen, you're gonna do your Bible study now. It shouldn't be hard. You guys just take turns looking at scriptures and go through and answer the true to false in some of the questions. Okay, so you can group up or group up here. Caleb, you need to get in a group. Please do that. Come on, everybody! Why is it doing that? No, sure, that is not what I asked.
You don't even want to stay on committee.
Okay, here we go. I want to get you guys out on time. Help me keep my commitment. All right, we are back.
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen, yeah, no, kind of. You'll understand in a minute. Okay, maybe, or you won't understand it. I don't know. One of the two is going to happen. Okay, so Bible study. Jesus, did he set boundaries?
Yes.
Were there certain people he showed things that he didn't show other people?
Yes.
Who was his number one relationship?
Father.
Who was his best friend?
John.
Who were the three he showed three things to?
Peter, James, and John.
Did any of you know about Jairus' house?
Yes. Yes, I know
And
about
tell me
it. I
what
just
the
read it.
scripture. Yeah. So, okay, that's just a random thought. How many men did he share out beyond the three? How many did he have?
12.
There were instances when he just talked to them, right? And what about beyond that? He had other disciples, right? At least 72, maybe more, right? Okay, as incarnate God, Jesus had a limit on how many relationships he could cultivate. Do you realize that?
Yes.
He has a body, but on earth he was limited to be in one place at one time. Even though he was God and wanted to cultivate relationships with all of us, in order to meet the goal that would allow that, he took on the frame of a man, and he had limited resources. He could only cultivate so many relationships. A lot of us have bought the idea that we are supposed to love everybody and therefore spread ourselves really ridiculously thin. But that is not effective. We need boundaries. We need to place. It is good and right for us to give people more access who give us more access. A marriage is an illustration of a relationship where you've granted more access to someone than to anyone else on the planet, and therefore they grant more access to you. If you are constantly putting your marriage aside to go hang out with your friends or to fix their problems at their house, then you are not honoring your commitment to grant this full access at that relationship, and your spouse is paying for it. So you have to have boundaries. People, the closer they are, so this is the illustration. This is you, and this is your God spot. God knows everything about you, and he has full access and full allegiance from you. And then there can only be one person in this spot that's closest to you. The closer you are to the center, the more access you have to somebody, the more rights they have to your resources, and the more willing you are to lay them out for them. So for most of us, it's a spouse, or it could be a sibling. If you're not married, it could be a sibling or a coworker or even a business partner that's in your spot right here. And then around here are the next people. For me, it's my children, even though one of them is in jeopardy of being bounced out here to Charlie Sheen. Just kidding. I'm keeping my love on. So here are the children. And then the next circle out here is where I put my life group and my staff here at SHOP and my family. So it's kind of crowded in my circles here, but as you go out, now, just because they're family doesn't mean they get to be in here. If they won't clean up their mess, if they won't be respectful to you, they can be right out here with Charlie Sheen or with Al Qaeda. You need to put them where they can handle themselves. They can't handle this kind. Some people can't handle this kind of access to your heart. They will hurt you, they will wound you, they will continue to want to disconnect from you, and so they need to be moved out. And that's good and right, and a good thing to do. Okay, so we're going to kind of talk through this. So the God spot is in the center. This is where your primary allegiance is, because God is the best love. He gives the best love, and he's the greatest influencer in my life. You have God at your God spot, and you are set to win. That is step 1 through 500. Keep God in the God spot. If you let someone else in your God spot, it's idolatry. Idolatry is not an Old Testament sin. It is a today sin. And the people closest to you Even though they love you and they don't know they're doing it, they will vie to get into that God spot. Trust me, you cannot let them. It is number one that you keep God in the God spot. And the illustration of this is Matthew 16, verses 21 through 24. Peter was opposing God's access to Jesus. This is where Jesus said that he would die for our sins, that he would die. And Peter said, no, I'll never let it happen, Jesus. And what did Jesus say to him?
Get behind me, Satan.
Get behind me, Satan. Why? Because Peter was vying for the God spot in Jesus' life. He loved Jesus, right? I mean, he was saying it because he loved Jesus and protecting life. Isn't that the nature we should have? But he wasn't aware that the Father's mission for Jesus, the Father's mission, you should never stand between someone you love and the Father's mission for their life. We do it all the time. Number one, because we aren't even aware of the mission for their life. We need to stand together with people in their mission. Peter got in the way, and Jesus had to rebuke him, and he told him, get behind me, Satan, because Satan is always looking for us to put someone else in that spot. He doesn't care who you put there. He just wants God moved out and someone else moved in. Doesn't even have to be him. He doesn't care. Just move him out and put someone else in, because he wants someone else to gain a greater hold on your affections and begin to define your priorities and your choices than the Lord. But we need to have God in our God spot. Listen, he is always sending us love messages. God always is. And Danny Silk says, if you don't think that God is sending you love messages, you haven't been checking your mail. Because he is always sending us messages. And next week, Jack is going to be talking about prophecy. And one of the things he's specifically going to be covering is 10 senses. We know 5, and he's going to talk about those and bless those for the Lord. Seeing and hearing. He's going to talk about other senses that God has given us, and that we were made to be not given over to sensuality, but to be sensitive. That we would be sensitive and in tune with God. And when we give our senses to God, we can be more aware of his presence. It's already been happening with me. I get the chills at night, and I was like, why am I getting the chills at night? Am I getting sick? And it's been happening since my surgery. And now I know it's God. He's moving on my skin so that I will know he's near me when I lie down and go to sleep. It is so precious. It happens to me now like 2 or 3 times, and that's the Lord. He's making himself known to me. He'll do it for you too. God is always loving us. The next thing is the next circle is your next deepest soul tie other than the Lord. It's your deepest soul tie. So it could be it could be a lot of different people. It depends. If you're not married, it should be your spouse if you're married. But if you're not, it could be your best friend. It could be one of your siblings. It could be a child. It could be a coworker. It could be a partner in business. Someone that you have a tie with and a commitment with that you can trust. And then outside of that, it's really important to understand, this is for spouses and for parents that have children, that this spot, if you're married, is for your spouse and not your children. It is not for your children. If you put your children here, you have broken your wedding vows. You've broken your marriage. You need to keep your spouse here. Your children are here. Your spouse is the first one next to God who has full access to your resources. And then your children after that. Does that make sense? Okay. Further out, more people can fit. So the further you get away from the center, the more people that can fit, because they have less access to you. So you can manage more of them. You can only have so many in the center. Now, Danny Silk thinks that it's pretty much like 1, 3, 12. Like he kind of thinks the numbers Jesus used are kind of good guidelines for us. Like you can have one person who is your person you have a soul tie with, and then beyond that you can have 3 that you're especially managing or really close to, and beyond that you can have 12. So, the numbers, you guys can decide if you like that. That's just something he presents in his book that you can look at. So, as Christians, like I said, we think we're supposed to love all people, and the truth is that, yes, we are supposed to love them, but love is not giving them full access to ourselves and all of our resources. Because if you give all of your resources away to people out here, When these ones here are giving you all of their resources, you've betrayed your relationships. Someone's going to pay. If you're giving them what they're due, they go without. So you have to set boundaries in your life. Access levels depend on levels of trust and intimacy. The closer to the center, the more access they have. And levels of intimacy determine how much of myself I'm going to offer when one of these people pulls on my relationship. Here's an example to help you understand that. Here, listen to this. A perfect stranger tells me about his car insurance. What am I going to do? I'm going to give him my sympathies and offer to pray with him for provision, right? This is a perfect stranger. I just met him at the grocery store. Number 2, if I've interacted with the person a few times and I know him a little, I'll probably say, oh, I'm sorry. Here's my number for my mechanic. I might give them my mechanic number. Probably not going to do that with a perfect stranger because I like my mechanic and I have no clue what this perfect stranger is going to be like as a customer. But if I've met someone a few times, I may give them the number for my mechanic, right? If it's a good friend, I may toss them the keys to my car and say, here, borrow my car until yours gets fixed. Take your time. If it's my daughter, I'll pull out my checkbook and I'll cover the repairs. Finally, Danny Silk says, if it's my wife, then there is no doubt in my mind that I'm talking to the person who will pick out the color of my next car. Because she is my most intimate human relationship, and I'm willing to put all my time, money, energy, and resources toward helping her with her problem. After Jesus, she is my greatest priority, and she has greatest access to my life. So I'm going to say this again because I think it's really important. People are not positioned in your boundaries because of their role, i.e. their family, so they automatically get access. They have to clean up their mess. Remember we talked about the dad whose son had poop on his shoes, and he came to the door, and his dad met him at the door. He's like, hey, son, you are welcome to come in the house after you either wash your shoes or take them off. And the son's like, Dad, and he's like, I love you, but you have to clean up your mess before you come in my door. And it's the same idea. You can love someone, but not allow them in until they clean up their mess. And if they clean up their mess, they get to come in. But if they're unwilling to clean up their mess, then you need to put them out to a place of access that they can handle. You can keep your love towards them, but it may be a while before you have them over for dinner. If they're crossing lines and they won't clean up their mess and be respectful. I had a relationship years ago that someone was just taking advantage of me. They would say, like, could you help me for this? And I would, like, could you help me while I go to a lunch appointment? Sure, I can help you. I'll watch your kids while you go to lunch. And so what time's your lunch appointment? Well, it's at 11. Okay, so they bring their kids over, I watch their kids, and they would come and pick them up at 4. And I was like, what the heck? A lunch appointment in my head is probably like 11 to 12:30 or 1. I have things to do. You didn't even ask. You come at 4. And I realized through another friend, and I started to get really bitter about this because it's happening a lot. And I kept thinking, I want this person to respect my life. And then I have things I need to do too. I'm being generous, but this person's going beyond limits. And a friend of mine said, you have no right to be upset because you've never communicated your boundaries. And I had to start communicating my boundaries. And the beautiful thing is that this person in my life responded great to boundaries. So I started to say, I can watch your kids from 11 to 1. If you can pick them up at 1, then I'm happy to do that for you. And the person said, okay, I'll pick them up at 1. And then I wasn't bitter anymore. Because before I started setting boundaries, I was bitter at this person. They didn't have to do anything. When they were around me, I was just like, you are so selfish. Don't you think about other people ever? And it was wrong because I never set any boundaries. So you have to take responsibility to set boundaries in your life with people, and they're going to rise to the occasion. If they don't rise to the occasion, let's say, and this is not my case, but let's say the person had come back at 4 again, then I would say, you didn't respect my boundaries. So next time you ask, I'm going to say no, unless you can keep the boundaries, because I had things to do and you didn't keep them. And you're going to set the boundaries that way. So this is how you can start to model things in your life and break patterns. Okay. I think this is super important. So I put them up. Sorry, it's all in caps. It takes me forever to fix the slide notes from all in caps. So I'm shouting it. No, I'm kidding, I'm not shouting it. It's just symbol. These are very important. Boundaries are not set to offend or to please others. They are set to protect your house. If you have a garden, you've seen Peter Rabbit. It's the cutest, funniest movie. I like it. If you have a garden, you're probably going to put up some boundaries to keep unwanted visitors from stealing your vegetables, right? Because you don't want to give them full access to your vegetables or you will get none, right? So boundaries are not set to offend or please others. They're set to set limits around your house. Although you can care genuinely about people's needs, you need to realize that you have limited resources. You are not superhuman. Jesus had limited resources. You cannot be the answer to everybody's needs. Somebody's going to pay. If you decide to please everybody who asks you for something, somebody who's not begging is going to pay. It's usually God. I'm going to be really honest. My ministry role as a leader the last couple years, I have said too many yeses to too many people. And who it's cost the most is Jesus. It's cost he and I's relationship top more than anyone else's. Because I'm so busy. People aren't asking for a lot. They just want a little. But when 50 people want a little, there's nothing left for Jesus. So if you want to protect your God spot, your marriage or your best friend or that friendship that really keeps you going, that partnership or whatever, and all those relationships going out, you're going to need to learn what the next one is. And that saying yes to someone necessarily requires you to say no to everything else. You cannot protect and please. And I'm going to read you something that I think will help you guys to understand that, maybe. But we'll get to it. Okay, so when you say yes to someone, if I say to my son, I'm going to be at your soccer game. I'm going to come to your soccer game and be there for you. That means I have to say no to my friends who are going out to lunch that day. Because I've said yes to my son. And I want to be consistent with what I say and with what I do so that I can be trustworthy. Are you guys all following me? It's pretty heavy. Okay, I like to think of the garden. I think the garden illustration is really good. In Genesis 2:15, the Bible says that God put man in the garden, right? God planted it. God provided the sun and all the resources to make it grow. But he put Adam in it to do what? To tend it, right? To care for it, to eat the fruit, and to manage the fruit, right? So we all have a garden. This is a way you can think of it. And we have to take care of our garden so we can keep living and so we have fruit to offer to other people. It's kind of like the oxygen mask on the airplane. If you don't put your mask on first, you can't help other people. So you've got to tend the garden and meet your needs so that you have more to give. We all agree, I think, that it's selfish for someone to cultivate their garden and keep everything for themselves. Like we would all say at face value that that's really selfish, right? When they're never sharing it. But it's also very selfish to not tend your garden because that means you don't have any food and you're going to have to get food somewhere else. So if you're not making boundaries in your garden, if you're not tending it, you're going to have to take someone else's power. You're going to have to take from someone else to feed yourself. And that is also selfish because you have nothing to give back to them. Remember, a respectful relationship, we're both moving toward each other. So we both are offering something from our garden and we're exchanging them. And it's an exchange of truth. Okay. You need to invest in knowing everything about your garden and how to make it flourish. I think this is really important. And I'm still talking about you. You need to invest in knowing about you and what you can grow and what fruit you can produce and how you can make it at its peak, how you can optimize it. I am learning that when I don't spend time with God, my garden diminishes. And time with God for me is a lot of time with God. And when I don't spend time with him, the fruit that I can really produce best is not as plentiful. But when I spend time with him, it's like this special tree that produces jars of oil. And it's like I just have so much to give away. So for me, and you may be different, but for me, one of my priorities is to spend a lot of time with God. It's very important for me to have quality and quantity time with the Lord. So you need to figure out what it is in your garden that you can cultivate and that you have to offer. We all have different fruits that we give away. And that's the beauty of why everybody in this room is my friend. Because I have things to give to you that you need, and you each have things in your garden that I need. And we get to meet each other's needs. And don't you want to have something to offer? No one enjoys just taking, really, at the heart of it. You want to give too. So I think it's good to think of it as a garden. Some gardens need fences, right? You need to set boundaries. Okay. Did all that. Sometimes I get out of order. You need to get really good at telling yourself and others what you will do. Okay, I think this is really important. I'm going to spend time with the Lord right now. I've committed my evening to my wife. I'm taking the kids on a hike that day. Saturdays are my day to read and study. I have friends in my life that are good at this. I don't know how that happened, but I have friends in my life that are good at setting boundaries, and it's a blessing to me because I learned from that, and that's a culture that we cultivate. This is what I'm going to do this day, and we know that that's what they're going to do, and we don't take it as a personal offense that they won't spend time with us. We know, and we honor, and we love that they protect that time. This is my family day. This is the day that I plan to spend with them. This is an evening I plan to spend with my husband. I've learned in ministry that I'm invited to a lot of things all the time. And I used to be able to say yes to all of them because it was a smaller amount of people. But now I have to have better priorities because I'm not choosing between good things and bad things. I'm choosing between good things and good things. And all things I'd like to be at. And maybe some of you are at that place where you've developed enough healthy relationships that there's a lot of good things to choose from. So it's going to help you to spend some time with the Lord. Spend time with the Lord. And ask him to help you draw your garden and know where your priorities fall and where your boundaries need to be ahead of time. Control yourself. Let your choices be led by the priorities you've committed yourself to, not other people's choices. Okay, here's some questions to help you, and then we're almost done. Am I making this choice to protect my priorities? Am I making sure that I'm only telling this person what I will do and not telling them what they need to do? And I'm going to read an illustration that will help you with this. Will I honestly be okay no matter what he or she does? That question is hard. When you set a boundary, this is really hard for me. I'm going to be honest. I have a lot of people in my life I really love and treasure. And it's really hard for me to say no to them because I feel like it's a smack in their face. But it's not. It's not. I have limited resources. I can only say yes to so many people. And if I continue to give to all the people that are asking and ignore the people in my own home, my family will fall apart. And so I have to learn. I have to put on my big girl pants and learn what my boundaries and what my priorities are. And I have surrounded myself, Jack and I have intentionally surrounded ourselves with people who we have asked to hold us accountable to these things. And you may need that too. They're the people who say, so that decision you just made, what were you basing that on? Because it doesn't sound like it matches with what your priorities really are. Sometimes you need someone who say that to you and help you to see those things. So those are some things that you can help, and you can have people around you to help. Okay, I'm going to read about George, and then we're going to have scripture, and we made it. Listen to this story about George. I hope this will illustrate boundaries to you guys. Danny Silk is a pastor, by the way. For example, a while back I got a call from a guy at church. Pastor, it's George. My wife left me last night. She told me in a note on my fridge. I think she's serious this time. I need to see you right away. Clearly, George was coming to me with a need he thought I could meet. A need he felt was very urgent. However, the needs of others don't control my choices. My priorities do. As it happens, one of my priorities is helping people who are going through relational crisis. That happened to be one of Danny's priorities. So I knew I wanted to help George with his need. But I also had to balance that priority with my other priorities. I had already told my son that I would play basketball with him that evening that George called me. The next day was our family day. Family always takes precedence over ministry in my life, so I made a choice. I would wait till I could look at my calendar in 2 days, see what I had opened for George, and call him back. 2 days later, calendar open and ready, I made the call. Hey there, George, I'm calling you back. How are you doing? Good Lord, came the distressed voice on the other end. Were you sick or in the hospital? It took you 2 days to call me back. No, George. Actually, I was playing basketball with my son. The game went long, and then I needed to spend time with my family. What can I do for you? I don't know, but I need to get in to see you. I have to see you. Can I come in right now? Well, you can come anytime you want, but I will be glad to meet with you on the 19th of this month. The 19th? That's like 2 weeks away. I know, but you're a pastor. I have to see you right away. I just need 5 minutes. I have an hour on the 19th. That is what I will do for you. But the note said that she won't come back until I see you. Probably so. I will let you finish this conversation with my assistant, who can set up that meeting for you on the 19th. Bye. I never told George what he could or could not do. I told him what I would do, without making excuses, explanations, apologies, or any attempt to convince him that my choice was right. I didn't need him to like the choice or agree with it. I didn't care if he was offended by it. I simply laid my offer on the table and left him to consider it. This is what it looks like to let powerful choices communicate boundaries to people. And I think that pastor is leading his people better than the messages that our good-hearted pastors are sending when they drop their family and they run to our urgencies. The truth of the matter is, and I say this from I've really only been doing this for 8 years, everybody's needs are urgent. Everybody's are. If you're calling me, it's pressing and it's tender and it's important. And I do value those things, and I do work to make my schedule available to meet those needs, but I have limited resources. And some of those resources are committed to the people that are closest. Good and right freeze so that we can love people well. And I think that we'll find God will do miracles in our lives. And he will. So you guys ever heard of Secretariat, the horse? Anybody want to give me the rundown? What happened with Secretariat? For anybody in here who doesn't know the story.
It was a horse that won things and ran fast.
Crown.
Very good. What were those things, Ray?
I feel like I nailed it. I don't know if there's any gaps in filling. I feel like I
The horse
hit
won
it
the
all.
Triple Crown. Had other horses done this?
Very
Very few.
fun.
So when Secretariat died, they found out why he won all those races. It was because he had a round heart. It was nearly 3 times the size of the normal horse's heart. Listen to the scripture, Psalm 119:32. I posted it on. I didn't even type it up here. Come on, Jennifer. I think it says, I will run the course of his commandments, for he has enlarged, and he will enlarge my heart. The course of God's commandments is to love the Lord your God. That God spot, I wish I still had one there, with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Keep him in your God spot. You guys all want this. I see it in your lives. I see you doing it. You inspire me to do it more. And then to love your neighbor, what? As yourself. We have got to get better at the way that we care for our own gardens, so that when God opens the doors to this place, to the world, and I really think he's going to the lost and the needy, even more so than he already has. And right now we kind of have a trickle of people who find us and call us. But when he starts the flood of people, you all will have a 22-pound heart. Because being in a relationship with God enlarges your heart. His love is inspiring. It's wise. You pick up skills from it. The way that he communicates teaches you how to communicate. You don't need any of this lesson if you're tuned into God, because he will teach you his ways, and these are his ways. Look at Jesus's life, guys. Read his responses. In order to heal one person, to go to Jairus' house and heal his daughter, he had to say no to the other people in order to get there and do that. That's why we always talk about knowing what the Father wants. That's why Jesus went in a way to pray with the Father so much, because he wanted the Father's help and the Father's directions. So I believe that the Lord can make our hearts 3 times the size of a normal heart. Can you imagine if all of us in our families and in our homes and here at SHOP when we're together and in our workplaces had hearts 3 times the size of the normal heart? We could give so much more love and keep our love on. But the way that that happens is to protect the access to our hearts in the right ways and to communicate our feelings, to crack open our hearts with those that are closest to us and share our feelings. I'm really thankful for this message. It's really changing my family's life. Last week's and this one is already changing me. I'm thinking things like, for instance, you know, Jack and I, we took over leadership of the kids camp from my friend Jody. I'm thinking, what's Jody's love language? I want to figure out what her love language is, and I want to bless her at camp in a language she can receive, in love that she can receive that message. Those are new thoughts I'm thinking. I'm thinking as a family that we can sit down together and be familiar with each other's love languages and know how we can help one another. I'm thinking that my children can learn now how to state how they're feeling in certain events and how they would like to feel. And that we can all start the hard process of learning to move towards one another and not away. It's a natural instinct to protect yourself. I do it a lot. And now I'm starting to catch myself when I do it. And it's like, ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't really want to disconnect from that person. I care about them. Recently, a friend of ours told us, he said, I'm committed to this relationship. I have your back. And I commit to not slander you, to not judge you. When you fail, I'm going to stand with you. And I'm going to love you. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a decision that he was making. He and his wife are making to love us. And they will do it because they're choosing each day to set boundaries and make strategies and to have goals to nurture that connection. And that's what you can do for others, and they will do for you. The Lord will provide it. So I'm going to pray for us. And then we're going to move away from this topic for a couple months. Next week, Jack's going to talk about prophecy. And then the next 2 weeks, Gloria and Jerome are going to talk about how do we love international people? How can we love the nations? They're going to give us some insights and some tips that I think are going to be really helpful. And they may bring in some of their other friends' insights too. And then beyond that, we'll have, I think, the next one is the Easter party. And they're not into April already. And Nate is going to be back. I'm going to be teaching on forgiveness, and then Nate is going to be back to talk to you guys about power evangelism. So those are some of the topics that are coming up. If you guys want to buy this book, you can, or you can just hang on tight, work with some of this stuff, and wait for this summer when we'll do a little bit more of this together. So I'm going to pray for us. So Lord, we just thank you for your commandments, that you gave them to us as keys and secrets to unlock real, true love between us. I pray, God, that you would do a miracle. I thank you that when we make an effort to be vulnerable and when we make an effort to listen, to understand, that you are going to back that effort with your grace, with supernatural power and help. And that I just believe and see that we're going to start to see more love abounding in our families, in our extended families, in our friendships, at work, and in our relationships here at SHOP. Thank you, Lord, that you will enlarge our hearts so that we can speak out of the overflow and abundance there. In Jesus' name, amen. You are